Hi, I'm Tyrrell of Uncommon Knowledge, and welcome to How to Help Clients Overcome Fear of Confrontation. 7 bulletproof ways to help clients make unavoidable confrontation work for them. Now, many years ago, there was a time when I had to confront someone in a job that I had. She was intimidating, 20 years older than me, but I had to confront this person because sometimes confrontations are unavoidable. I was her manager, and her bullying of other staff really just had to stop. She was apt to scream and shout, but also cunningly find and deftly push emotional buttons that you didn't even know that you had. She was an accomplished bully, in other words, with all the tricks of the trade up her sleeve. Now, at least one colleague had been reduced to tears by this woman just in the week before I confronted her. I had no particular fear of confrontation myself, at least that's what I thought at the time, but with her I wasn't so sure. So I asked her if I could have a word, and so there we were in this room together, and suddenly I felt like I hated confronting her. And she looked at me, with venom, as if to say, I may have to be here, but I don't have to listen to you. Careful what you say to me. And I'd been, inwardly rehearsing what I was going to say to her all morning, but then she spoke first, and she asked me aggressively what this was all about. But despite my determination to stay calm, I surprised myself by suddenly becoming very angry with her, which was a mistake. I felt like, why the bleep should I worry about upsetting you when you've been bullying and manipulating and not caring at all what other people feel? So I said to her, what it's about is a grown woman acting like a kindergarten bully, throwing her weight around and being aggressive to everyone. And she later tried to claim I'd been discriminatory because of her obesity. She was rude, lying, threatening, making personal comments to other members of staff, and I told her this is what she'd been doing. And I said, it's bullying and it's got to stop. And after I'd said that, there was a kind of stunned silence. And then to my astonishment, she started to cry. Now, there's an inbuilt mechanism within non-psychopathic males, or at least me, which has them immediately crumple into desperate capitulation the moment a woman starts to cry. And sure enough, as her tears manipulatively flowed, to my shame, I started to backpedal a little. I tried to focus on her good points. I softened my voice. I even invented a few good points that I didn't really think she had, all because the waterworks had switched on. But she'd wrong-footed me, softened me up, and now she leapt back with a vengeance. No one ever speaks to me like that, she said. And as she screamed and ranted and raved, I noticed that her eyes were in fact as dry as a bone. Well, I screwed that up, I thought to myself, as she stomped out of the room and wouldn't hear anything else from me at all. So defensive tears had turned to angry attacks so fast that I'd been sort of flummoxed before I even knew it. I'd made a fatal mistake of becoming emotional myself, and by becoming so obviously and quickly angry with her. So what was the upshot of that? Well, she did actually bully less, especially if I was around, and she never actually crossed me again. And some bullies will cease bullying not because they've suddenly developed a conscience or care or consideration and empathy for other people, but because it's become more difficult for them to get away with it. My co-workers felt better too, because it felt like some sort of injustice had been at least partly righted. But I felt back then that I could have handled the whole thing better. But it's hard to appeal to a better nature when it might not actually be there at all. So the point is that confrontation isn't always easy and doesn't always go smoothly. But like a bitter medicine may hold some sort of a cure. But what about those clients who just can't confront at all? They just can't confront other people. So some clients seem totally unable to stand up for themselves or stand up for other people even, and confront others. And this can cause them to ruminate bitterly, feel anxious, frustrated, and angry, and put upon and trodden over, and therefore damage their mental health, as well as maintain unfair situations. So the inability to confront also gives implicit permission for unscrupulous others to treat our clients poorly. This lack of capacity to ever confront can lessen self-esteem and certainly contribute to the rumination which causes and worsens depression. So why are some clients less able to confront other people? Well, fear of confrontation may stem from a chronic reluctance to upset the apple cart. This is a desire at all costs to keep the peace, and keeping others happy, especially if they're difficult people, becomes the one and only priority and takes precedence over personal needs and the needs of the wider situation. Now, I don't personally enjoy confrontation. I'm not one that gets a kick out of it or a buzz from discord, and I always want everyone to just get along. But at least I know if push comes to shove, I can confront if I have to. Sometimes we see clients who just can't even imagine a scenario in which they'd ever be able to confront another person for their bad behavior. And that may be the root of many of their problems in life. Often a chronically people-pleasing client may have had to deal with highly difficult parents when they were growing up, or siblings, which may have led them to fill the role of peacekeeper and appeaser. They just grew up feeling that was who they are. So this, perhaps coupled with a naturally agreeable personality, caused them to mislearn early on that their only role was to keep others happy at all costs. Perhaps they grew up feeling they were constantly treading on eggshells or walking through a minefield around a fractious parent who might suddenly and terrifyingly explode at any moment. This feeling of terror may have spread to encompass the idea of upsetting anybody in life. Then again, other factors may also be at play. Undue fear of confrontation may stem from a fear of rejection, wanting to be nice all the time, regardless of how the other person behaves, is a fast-track route to repressed bitterness and sends clear messages to the insensitive or ill-intentioned or the narcissistic that I can be treated poorly or any way you choose. So pathological niceness may be an attempt to meet the need for safety, but always having to be nice can, of course, backfire big time, as my client Monica found. So Monica told me that she had a friend who had recently accused her of being two-faced and a phony. Okay, and this same friend had gotten into the habit of asking Monica, or demanding from Monica, to babysit her 2-year-old daughter twice a week while she went out. Now Monica, who could find her forthright friend intimidating, never dared say no to her, but confided to another friend that she felt this was becoming a burden, this constant babysitting. Now, this second friend then told the first friend what Monica had told her. And the first friend confronted Monica, wanting to know why she'd pretended to be fine with babysitting so often. Now, of course, if it does leak out that you're unhappy about something, but you've never actually let on to the person that you're unhappy with it, you never mentioned it, others may feel that you're untrustworthy. Another risk of not clearly and calmly confronting when it needs to happen is the classic explosion effect. So on one occasion at work, the resentment Monica had long been bottling up against her line manager had finally burst to the surface one day, and she just exploded, as she said. And all kinds of things came out that she later regretted saying and had never wanted to say. Her manager had been completely stunned, having had no prior indication that Monica had been unhappy at all about anything. So continual failure to confront can eventually create such pressure that it's bound to burst out in some way, creating an explosion that can seem out of proportion to the original problem that the person has. This can then further play into the client's sense of shame and guilt, making them even less likely to want to confront in future, and continuing to bottle things up, even when it's hugely necessary to say something, to have some kind of confrontation. On the other end of the spectrum, some folk are addicted to the buzz of confrontation, and this causes other types of problems, of course. Every situation becomes an excuse for them to have a confrontation. But if you ever work with clients who feel they would rather do anything than confront someone, when it would really help them if they did, I hope the following ideas are useful. So step 1, decide whether confrontation is needed. If a client wants to become better at managing confrontation, I might remind them that being good at handling confrontation doesn't mean needlessly shouting people out or creating problems where there were no problems to start with. Some clients may have been afraid they'd need to become aggressive or bolshy, and we can remind our clients that they have the power to decide, the agency to consider whether a person needs confronting or not. So being more confrontational also means having the power of the option, whether you are confrontational or not. But that decision needs to be predicated on calm analysis rather than fear. The client needs to be able to be calm enough to judge for themselves, not just whether they need to confront the person or not, but also whether it's safe to confront the person. That is, they won't become physically violent, okay? And whether it's the right time to confront the other person or not. So Monica told me she'd wanted to finally confront her son over his messiness, but then discovered he'd just been dumped by his girlfriend. So maybe that wasn't the time to bring up his messiness in his bedroom. The time wasn't right. So clients don't have to confront, but we can remind them it's more to do with being clear in their own mind that they can confront if they choose to, and where the cutoff point lies. The point where they need to say something, where does that lie, that cutoff point? They can make their own rules and then respect themselves enough to stick to those self-made rules. So for example, we might think, okay, my neighbors have played loud music till late twice this week and it kept me awake. They don't usually do that, so I'll just see if they do it again before the weekend. And if they do, then I'm going to talk to them. So working out whether to challenge and when to challenge is part of the overall skill of being able to challenge effectively, to be confrontational if need be. Next up, we can teach our clients some practicalities. So step 2, set proper time aside. So Monica was thinking about talking to her father. There's lots of people in her life she needed to confront. To her father about needing to take his medication for diabetes. And once she decided she really did need to say something to him and to make her feelings and expectations clear, I asked her what she would do next. Okay, so what are you now going to do? Now you've decided that. And at first she sort of looked nonplussed and confused, but then decided that the next step might be to tell him she wanted to speak to him. Okay, so that was great. She was devising a strategy. So she wasn't just going in there with guns blazing or being overly assertive, but she described him. So we can, of course, simply speak to someone spontaneously. We can do that. But the advantage of setting an appointment, so to speak, is that it lets the person know this is important enough to set time aside. It's not a small matter. So I suggested to Monica that if her father demanded to know immediately what it's about, what is all this about, she might say, okay, well, I was going to talk about this later, but since you ask, it's about, and then talk about what it's about. So Monica was again getting overly worried about not wanting to upset anyone. So I suggested, if a person feels intimidated by you, setting a time to talk that's not necessarily a bad thing. There's nothing wrong with a bit of time for self-reflection. Okay, so the gap between you asking for a time to talk and then talking with them can make them think a little, perhaps. So we looked at different ways of asking, can we have a chat this morning, please? Or I want to talk to you about something that's really important. Can we talk in 10 minutes, please? So that's just, letting them know that you need to communicate something important. I need to talk to you about something. Have you got time now or later today? So it could be as simple as that. So what should I say? Now, Monica wanted to know in detail what the nature of her confrontation should be. How should she confront? What should she actually verbalize? So what's a good principle for the content of a mature confrontation? So step 3, stick absolutely, completely and utterly to the facts. So all those years ago when I confronted the cry bully at work, I hadn't really stuck to facts. I'd got emotional. I'd accused her of being a kindergarten child. And I'd spoken vaguely about bullying, but it wasn't precise and she could easily refute it. It was impressionistic and more of an ad hominem attack than a laying out of actual incidents and facts calmly. I spoke to Monica about the importance of sticking to facts to avoid messiness. I used a hypothetical example to make my point, saying, I've noticed you've been playing your music loudly until 1 a.m. And that's very different from knocking on the door and shouting, what the hell do you think you're doing? Who do you think you are? And calling them names and so forth and swearing at them. Where do you get off, you jerk? All of that is tempting to say, but just sticking to facts. None of that stuff actually means anything. And yes, I know it means you're angry, but when you're confronting someone, they need to know immediately why you might be angry. Okay, and just yelling and shouting and name calling just confuses them, and now they can confront you with that. So confrontation needs utter clarity. When we stick just to the facts, we automatically avoid inflammatory insults. If we insult someone, we've created a new issue for them to feel aggrieved about, and that can then be the issue that they come back to time and time again, the fact that you've shouted and sworn and called them names. Next, with Monica, we delve deeper into how Monica could communicate when challenging and confronting. So step 4, the all-important I statement. So if you want to know how to make someone defensive, start a sentence with the word you. Even better if you follow it with a globalization. You never, or you always. a negative generalization. The word you can actually stop people listening altogether because it simply pushes a button for them to become defensive. And it becomes a trigger for cast iron defenses to come down. So I suggested to Monica that she use rather I statements and give people less challenge. So I've noticed that you is a gentler startup and is unarguable. It's easy to argue with you are a bleep, but not with I feel that your behavior is like this. If you tell someone you feel let down, they can't actually argue with how you feel, even if they think you shouldn't feel like that. So I statements when challenging, confrontational. I've noticed, I want to talk about, I've been noticing that, I've been hearing a loud noise coming from your room in the wee small hours. Okay, so using I statements made a lot of sense to Monica and further added to her confidence and repertoire of means to confront someone, and the feeling that confrontation wasn't just about wading in angrily, but had a technique and structure she could follow. Of course, using I statements and a soft startup and so forth doesn't mean that someone won't become angry, but you haven't done anything they can really be angry about. One of the most important aspects of confrontation is clarity. The actual problem needs to be communicated, no matter how much the person being confronted has annoyed you or may deflect and obfuscate. Okay, still need to be clear with them. And we can follow up the presentation of facts with clarity about why it's a problem. So step 5, be sure to communicate why it's a problem. You might sort of assume that the person should know why it's a problem, but communicate it. So I reminded Monica that once the confrontee knew what the problem was, because she'd stuck to the facts and started with I statements to keep them listening, she needn't assume they'd know why this issue was a problem for her. So she'd need to make it clear, to spell it out. For example, we might say to someone, I've been hearing a loud noise coming from your room in the wee small hours. It's a problem because it wakes me up, making me tired for work the next day. Okay, now that seems obvious thing to say, but we need to hammer home why something's a problem. Okay, and Monica admitted that she often felt that she shouldn't need to tell someone, how to behave. And sometimes we let behaviors go because we feel we shouldn't have to tell them. They should just know that we've got to work in the morning or know how to be decent. But she'd been assuming that they should see the situation exactly as she did. And again, I used a couple more hypothetical examples. So the reason that shouting at other staff members in front of clients is problematic is that it makes us all appear unprofessional and may lose us business, meaning there's less money for everybody. And if they can't see why that's a problem, recommend they take a year-long sabbatical to someplace far away. The reason never doing your own washing up is a problem is that it creates resentment in the house, and in me specifically, and may cause maggots to breed in the unwashed up plates. Okay, so the next step was for Monica to use a little persuasion. So step 6, state the benefits and seek agreement. So finally, I suggested to Monica she could state the expected benefits from the changed behavior for the confrontee as well as for herself. So why you changing is it going to be good for you? Once she'd done that, she could end the chat by seeking agreement from them that things would be different in future. Now, if they reneged on that, if they relapsed on that agreement, she had something to return to and could remind them of their agreement. After all, if she'd been dealing with an ultra considerate and sensitive, empathetic and kind person, the confrontation might not have been necessary in the first place. If people aren't kind or considerate or sensitive enough, we have to spell stuff out to them. Okay, as it was, she might have to spell out what changes she wanted tell them why those changes would be good for them, for both of them, and seek agreement that those changes could indeed occur now that she'd made it plain what they needed to be. So seeking agreement in front of a witness may be even more powerful. For example, you might say to someone, in future, I'll appreciate it if you can ask me before putting me down to do overtime, at work, for example. That will be better for me because I'll feel more relaxed and less resentful, and for both of us because then we'll have a better working relationship and you won't be left with me not being able to do the shift when you'd assumed that I would be able to do it. Okay, so can we agree to do it that way in future, for you to let me know, to ask me before just putting me down for these extra shifts? So these steps and ideas would have been little better than useless without this final vital step to better confrontation. So step 7, above all, we need to keep emotionally calm during a confrontation. So Monica was happy with these confrontation strategies, but worried about her emotional state during the actual confrontation itself. She was right to worry. When we're too emotionally aroused, we can experience an emotional hijacking, in which our thinking brain and ability to reason and articulate are hijacked, metaphorically, by powerful emotion, so we can no longer think, act, or talk clearly. And I reminded Monica that many people rehearse what they're going to say to someone. Okay, they're thinking, as I did many, many years ago. I rehearsed in my mind what I was going to say, but I didn't rehearse how I was going to feel. Okay, we plan what we're going to do, but we don't prepare for feeling the best possible way ahead of time, unless we know self-hypnosis. So I suggested we could rehearse calm confrontation, both through relaxed role play with each other in the therapy session, with me being the stand-in for the person she needed to confront, but also through relaxed hypnotic rehearsal. So over and over with Monica, I practiced the steps of confrontation that I've been talking about just now, until that communication, that way of communicating, had become second nature to her. And we did that in such a calm way over and over. She rehearsed her body language, her facial expressions and everything. Now, she'd never needed a crib sheet when she'd actually need to confront someone. It was in there. She knew what she needed to do. And then I encouraged her to relax deeply and observe herself calmly and assertively confronting someone she needed to speak to. With such calm and focus and confidence, I suggested she see herself as poised, polite and clear in those times. She was to notice what it was about her body language, expressions and words that let her observing self know that the she in that situation was calm, comfortable and confident. And we did this over and over until it started to feel natural to automatically feel calm and comfortable when confronting someone. I wrote down for her the steps of confrontation, which are, just to remind you, 1, decide calmly whether the confrontation is in fact really needed. 2, if appropriate, request to talk ahead of time, set an appointment. 3, stick absolutely, completely and utterly to the facts. 4, use the all-important I statements. 5, communicate why it's a problem. 6, state the benefits of change, why things will be better once things change. And 7, seek agreement that things will change, and then refer back to that agreement if the person relapses. And 8, use relaxed rehearsal to prime the mind and body to feel calm during such times of confrontation. So Monica now had the strategies and emotional learning and preparation to manage conflict by managing her emotions and choosing whether she wanted to confront or not from a place of fear or wanting to please others, but from a place of choice. Okay. She told me later it had changed her life. All those years ago when I confronted my colleague at work, before I knew so much about psychology, I really lost my cool and handled her badly. And I gave her a reason for counter-accusation because I'd been rude to her, okay? And I'd likened her to being like a child, okay? Now, to such a point that I'd almost blown it, you know. So handling conflict effectively is a key life skill. Helping those who need it to develop it can transform lives. And that's why it's so important to help clients confront other people and be clearer about where their boundaries lie. So I hope you found that useful, and if you did, please hit like and subscribe. And if you want to hear when my next video is published, hit the notification bell below this video. I'm Mark Tyrrell of Uncommon Knowledge, and if you want to read or subscribe, I should say, to my email newsletter, you can find it over at unk.com/blog. And thanks for watching.